Hello. Hi, Kelly. Good morning.
Hello.
Hi. It is the 21st of June, Sunday. It's a little bit after noon here in Germany. We have a little bit of a time difference with Kelly because she's all the way in Arizona. And you are our 11th story in this series. And Kelly, tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm Kelly. I'm 24 years old. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. Gilbert, to be a little bit more specific, if you happen to know the city. Uh, I am taking time off of school and work right now because I have a heart condition, which leaves me immunocompromised during this time. So I was unable to, not much of my life has changed. I was pretty much homebound to begin with, but just on a little bit of an extreme now. And it definitely, like, I have to be super careful when I go out.
You have to.
But yeah, I think that's like all about me.
Well, we can start with that. Anyways, as we go on, you'll be able to tell us more. But you already mentioned that because of your heart condition, you have to be more cautious and be at home more often. So, are you saying that even how many weeks or how many months before this all began were you already at home that you had to take time off from school and work?
I It's been a few years now. Like I'll do some classwork on school online when I'm able to, but most of my life is doctor's appointments. So I think like the big change with COVID, well, one, I had moved to a different state
Hmm.
literally like weeks before we found out it hit the United States.
Oh,
Um, yeah, I moved to Boise, Idaho. Uh, and so it took a bit longer to hit there. And so I felt really safe and didn't really sink in like, oh, this is a global pandemic and we won't have to stay home or anything because we're in Idaho and there's no offense if you're in Idaho, it's a very nice place, but there's just not much there. So I just assumed we'd be okay there. But I've mainly been home, and then some of the big difference is no one's going to regular doctor's appointments during COVID, especially not if you move to a new place and you have to already have established care with a doctor to even like be seen. So that was a big part of the pandemic for me, was trying to deal within the healthcare system to get my medicine. Um, yeah.
oh, yeah. Especially, it's not only the fact about actively being able to go, right, and get your medicine.
Mhm.
So it was also, okay, is it available in that pharmacy
Mhm.
you usually go or wherever else? So
Right.
just to be clear, where are you right now?
Right now, I am in Phoenix, Arizona. I moved because I was unable to get into um, my doctors and have medicine. Like I was without an inhaler for like a month. But I had to move back to Arizona to have access to medical care and all that that I needed. And I moved back the week of May 1st. I was on the road traveling for a week during coronavirus, just like crossing my fingers for going through hotels and um, stayed a night in Vegas. So I got to see the entirely empty strip. And most hotels were still closed down on the road. And even when my family and I arrived back in Arizona, there's only a few hotels open. And they would only have a section of the hotel open at a time, and you would stay in that section. And then when someone would check out of that room would be closed off for like 3 days before someone could come back into there. So it was interesting.
Yeah, definitely different, right? You will remember that trip, this trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. And talking about just what is happening right now, you can tell me about the US in general, or specifically about Phoenix, Arizona. What's the topic? What is the concern that everybody is talking about? What is in the news right now?
Well, in Arizona, we've had a massive spike in cases. And so today, or technically yesterday, the different cities within Phoenix, and I think in other places around Arizona, had voted that everyone has to wear masks in public before. That's mandatory now. And it wasn't before. Most people were not wearing masks when you would go out. And still, it's not being enforced.
It's not.
Not entirely, no. You're not going to get like arrested or a fine really for not wearing a mask. So people are getting a lot better at wearing masks now that it's mandatory. As soon as you walk out of the store, though, it's just mask off. But there will still be a few people in the stores even that are not wearing the masks. But it's getting better.
But it's a long time. I mean, we're almost end of June, and only now they're speaking about wearing masks in general or in stores. It's
I think that at first, well, it took Arizona a very, very, very long time to shut down. I forget the exact date, but even after Arizona shut down, there's still golf courses were considered essential businesses, so people could still be out golfing. So we have very lax rules, but I think masks were, I don't know about mandatory, but definitely heavily suggested. And then now we're in phase 2 of the reopening, even though we are not eligible for phase 2. We have not met the proper requirements to be staying in this phase.
And what are the requirements? What give us a
just like having the cases go down or at least be steady, whereas our cases have been spiking and the hospital beds are overflowing or about to start overflowing. So everyone's getting their hair cut again. People are out bowling, out at restaurants.
Oh wow!
Basically, whatever people normally do for the most part. I think malls aren't really open yet, except for we have a lot of, being in Arizona, we have a lot of outdoor malls, so shops in the outdoor malls will be open. But
it's a very different reality not only compared to other countries in the world, but also within different states.
Yeah.
It,
it's like oh, sorry.
No, I'm just thinking you're in the same country and you're behaving completely different to some other states that were hit worse, that were worse off than Arizona, or even better off, and still took more strict measures, right?
Yeah, I mean, we were strict for a little bit, but then strict, I mean, we weren't like New York City where they really, really, really shut down and people did not leave their apartments, except for a mandatory grocery shopping trip. It is very interesting being out and about. It's like nothing ever happened and everything is business as usual, and things are still like, maybe shops will still be closed a bit earlier. now the hours are extending again, but at first it was things are closing earlier, and now we're almost fully back to regular business hours. But it's just treated more like an inconvenience if if treated at all.
So
Except for, I mean, there are some people who are still cognizant of what's going on, but
it's fewer than most.
yeah, it
So
feels that way.
when you
It could
say
be,
inconvenience, you mean like that the pandemic is an inconvenience, seen as an inconvenience?
yes. Or I think there are so many people who don't seem to believe that the pandemic is a great threat or that it really is happening or some conspiracy or it only affects if you're old or immunocompromised. So, which we know is not true, but I think there's just so much false information and that is circulating around. It's I don't think people really know how to react, and some people are very violent about wearing masks. They refuse to wear masks, and if you're wearing masks, you'll get like dirty looks, and people think that you're like trying to take away their freedom or something, which is definitely the opposite. Like, I'm just trying to protect you and myself.
Protect everybody, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's watching it from outside, so from abroad, it's very weird, I must say. It doesn't really make sense, especially
Yeah.
because you can see within the states states that have been heavily affected, and you see why. And even if you just look outside of the United States, you have every single country in the world that's been affected, and you have all
Yeah.
the different situations. So to think that a pandemic does not affect you, it's a bit of a dangerous wishful thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
is there anything else specific to Phoenix, maybe that?
I think that we just became like we hit having the most cases in the United States on a daily basis the past few days. So that's fun. Yeah, I think that people having to wear masks is new. We'll see how that goes over. I know President Trump is having a rally here on the 23rd.
In
And
Phoenix?
I'm sorry, what?
In Phoenix?
Yes, in Phoenix.
Oh,
So we'll see how that goes. And I believe he had tweeted that if there are bad protesters at the rally, that they would be met with violent force and be arrested and all that fun stuff that we've been seeing at protests. So
okay.
we'll
And
see.
will the rally or the gathering, the rally that President Trump is having, will it be as big as, or should be as big as it should have been as the Tesla rally that happened just yesterday, or?
The venue looks a lot smaller than the venue in Tulsa by a few thousand. In
Okay.
fact, I was actually surprised at how small it is and that Trump agreed to it because I didn't think he would go to a small venue.
Huh. And do you, by any chance, know are the same measures or non-measures, if you want to call them, are they going to be taken? Because I had a look at the rally that took place yesterday, and social distancing is not a reality, and
Right.
masks, from what I understood, they were given, but if you look around the videos and the clips and
Yeah.
the pictures, there were barely anybody wearing them. So they're doing the
Yeah.
two things that you shouldn't do: not wear masks and be really close together indoors.
Indoors, yes.
Exactly. Do you know if it's going to change in Phoenix, or?
It doesn't appear that way. From I was looking at the site that's his host, Students for Trump, run by Turning Point USA, um, and it appears that you register and you have to sign this waiver. If I get coronavirus during this, I do not hold you, President Trump or the campaign or this organization accountable.
Oh,
And so, yeah, I think masks are not required unless something has changed due to the new laws in the state of Arizona.
yeah.
We'll see.
We'll see what
I
happens.
don't I don't I don't expect to see lots of masks or social distancing. I mean, we had so many protests in Arizona to reopen the state. Uh, so I think that kind of showed the world where Arizona stood on this issue.
Unfortunately. Yeah, the cases speak for themselves also, right? The new
Yes.
cases that you're having. And going away from what's happening right now in the present, in Arizona and in the States in general, can you just tell me a little bit about what was the first measure that the United States took to stop the spread of COVID-19, or maybe what did Arizona do? We already spoke a little bit, but just give me a general understanding of what occurred in the
Uh,
last few months.
well, the first thing that was done was a travel ban on China. So if you were from China, you couldn't travel here. Um, and then it was slowly like starting to call people who were overseas back to come back to the US, or be locked out. Um, and and there's things just started slowly closing. I wasn't in Arizona when everything closed. I was in Idaho, and um, basically like the first things that we saw: toilet paper gone, disinfectant gone, a lot of food, especially frozen, gone. And then it was like businesses started to shut down. I had my mom had booked a haircut appointment, and the hairdresser was like, "Oh, like literally the day of, oh, our business we just found out that we're being forced to close down." So it was little all the small businesses started to close down, and it just started to become only essential, and, and the roads just became a lot more empty, and everyone was taking up the activity of going on walks.
The word.
uh, yeah, so I think it was just a slow, oh, this isn't really here, it's okay, we'll just wash our hands more and use more Lysol wipes. And then it just seemed to almost overnight everything just shut down.
Became more serious. And
Yeah, I
on
think the first thing oh, sorry.
no, tell me, you think the first thing?
Oh, the first thing that I really noticed, I was like, oh, this is probably a bigger problem than I realized. I should look into this. Seeing the late night shows, like Late Night with Stephen Colbert, The Late Show, all of them start to suddenly have to have no audience, and then transition TV shows to being at home. Like that's something that's never happened. So that was a kind of a trigger for me, like, oh wow.
This is serious.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually, that was gonna be my next question, because as you know, different. It doesn't mean that when your country goes on lockdown, it's not necessarily when you realize, right? It could be you realize earlier, and there's some people in certain countries that that wasn't even the factor that made them, like take a deep breath and say, okay, this is serious. It took them a while longer. And then you have some people that it was so incremental that in the end there was not one moment. But so for you it was really seeing these late night shows without an audience and understanding, okay, that's never happened, no matter what was
Yeah,
happening around the world or in the States. And
that was weird and eerie. And that was near the start of it, and then just starting to become completely locked into my phone and on the internet and seeing what was going on in New York City. There was this, I think it was a video, and it was around the time that Trump was tweeting, "Oh, this isn't real. They're trying to get me." It was all becoming very political, and then you see this video, and they're in front of a hospital in New York, and they are loading up a freezer truck that's used for food, like a massive semi freezer truck, and carrying body bags of people who died from coronavirus in there. And that I don't even really have a word for what that is to see that. And it's just,
it's, yeah.
it's shocking, it's tragic, it's one of the worst things I've ever seen. And
Yeah, it's especially, at least I can tell you from my experience, I remember seeing people around me thinking this is not going to come here to Europe
mm-hmm,
because it was happening in China. And yes, it was real, but it was in China and so far away.
yeah,
And yeah, with globalization, 21st century, nothing is far away, right? As we can see with the pandemic. So
mm-hmm,
I can imagine you being somewhere else in the States and seeing New York, and well, New York is New York, right? So you
yeah,
know about it, you hear about it. Yeah, too. It's and thinking, so knowing how these months have gone by, what the things that have happened, the things that have been done or not done, and just your personal experience, what are your concerns? So what is it that you hope will happen for Arizona, for the States, but also what you're a little bit afraid of? Just what are your thoughts? What do you think is going to happen in the next few days, in the next few weeks?
no. Well, my general fear is that we all just become, we being the United States and perhaps the world, we all just become a bit complacent, or this is the new normal, that we have this many deaths every day, this many cases every day. It's just the new normal, but life is as usual. This is just our new normal life. And that we just come to accept that and lose a bit of our humanity that way. Um, and uh, Also to watch, I think it'll be really interesting to see if, not if, sorry, that's the wrong word, how many people contract COVID from these rallies. Um, but I definitely think, because I saw this during Memorial Day as well, that whoever the rise in cases around that time, I believe that they're going to try and say, oh, it's the Black Lives Matter protesters, and that's where it's coming from, when no, it's most likely not, because most of the people who are out protesting are wearing masks and out in the open air, so it's much more likely that it would come from a rally. So I hope that the blame isn't shifted. I hope that we don't become complacent. And I just, in general, I hope that this stops being a political matter, and that we're even discussing it in this way. President Trump had said several times that, or I'm going to like paraphrase here, but basically that people wearing a mask was to show that it didn't stop anything. It was just to show that you disapproved of him. And so to see something that's meant as a preventative measure to be turned into, oh, I hate this politician, it's like, no, it's not all right to put that sort of dialect into this pandemic. So I hope that we can push aside political differences and just realize that we are all human. We are all trying to do our best and make it through. And that there was so much camaraderie at the start of the pandemic and people going around and helping each other. And I hope to see that come back.
Yeah, and especially just touching on your point that you made about the pandemic and the politics. The pandemic doesn't care from what party you are or what country you're from or what politician you prefer over which one. For the pandemic, you are all, we are all possible hosts, and depending on our life, our background, like if we are immunocompromised or not, we're at higher risk depending on our age, but in the end, we are all potential hosts, right? So a pandemic is not political. And yes, I do hope that people that need to realize this truth start realizing sooner rather than later, right? You have the United States has almost 122,000 deaths today, 21st of June.
Yeah.
And it's
supposed to be at 200,000 by September, I believe.
It's heartbreaking. It's the country with the most deaths in the world, and it was one of the countries that had a little bit more time than others, to react and act. So we are almost done with our conversation, with our interview. Just to continue on this more, what your thoughts are on this train of thought. Could you tell me if you could speak to a Kelli, so if you could speak to Kelli in the future, so a Kelli from 14 days in the future, and you could give her a message, what would you tell her?
Just because people are acting normal around you does not mean that things are normal, and to not forget, and that to not stop fighting for the things that are important. Just because the news cycle has moved on, that doesn't mean that people have stopped dying. That doesn't mean that we should stop protesting for Black Lives Matter, or stop wearing masks, stop washing our hands, all that, because there's human lives that are still being really affected. So don't become complacent.
Very, very serious but realistic and much needed message. Let's see what happens in the next few weeks. And thank you very much, Kelli, for your time.
Thank you.
We'll see each other in 14 days.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.